Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about this plant and heat and stress. And we're probably going to have my kitty come down because he's followed me everywhere today. I don't know, he's a little clingy, probably because of the heat. This plant here is pineapple weed, and pineapple weed kind of has the look of chamomile. Here, let me pick one up. You can see that the feathers, or the leaves, are very feathery. They're kind of small. The flowers do not have rays. It kind of looks like the flowers, are not open as of yet, but really that's all they get. They get these teeny tiny little white, it almost looks like it's an egg in an egg cup there. And some people will compare it to chamomile, and it does very much look like chamomile, except that it is much shorter. Chamomile will get a lot taller than this, and they never get the white rays off the flowers. Anyway, this is pineapple weed. Pineapple weed tends to grow in the crappiest soil you can have. It grows all over the place. It came from Europe, so it grows all over Europe, and it grows all over the U.S. It'll even grow in deserts. And as I said, the crappier the soil, the more pineapple weeds you're going to find. And this area here, kind of pull back, this is where in 2008 we had a big flood, and I had some friends stay here, and they brought their campers and they parked right here. And so the camper sat on this ground and really compacted it, and also people were getting in and out of the camper, so a lot of foot traffic, a lot of it. For about a month and a half we were kind of stuck back here. And this area, just the soil has yet to recover. It's just now coming to the point that it's starting to recover. And because of this, the year after that, we got a ton of this pineapple weed. If you have a gravel driveway, it likes to come up in gravel driveways. Any place that you parked heavy machinery and really compacted the soil, it tends to like that. Places that have been damaged so badly that other plants don't seem to want to grow in it, the pineapple weed will come up in that area. And pineapple weed is really great. Today is a hot day. I know if you're down in Florida or Texas, you're like going, really? It's not that hot. But it's going to be about 95 today. And when in Wisconsin, for us, that's very hot. So I'm going to pick it. I'm going to cut it with some scissors. We're going to wash it, and I'm going to make a sun tea out of it. And that's pretty much what you do with it. Pineapple weed cannot be dried. It loses every little bit of goodness when it's dry. What pineapple weed is good for is to help relieve the physical stress of heat. And a lot of people do not see stress as being physical. They think of it as an emotional or a mental state. But, excuse me, you really truly do need to have, oh my goodness, I'll lose the ability to speak here. You really do truly need to have a balance to be stress-free. You have to have that's peacock, in case anyone needs to know that. You need to have a physical, your body needs to be physically well, you need to be emotionally well, and you need to be mentally well. And of course, many people will also say spiritually well. You need to have a balance. You can't just focus on one. You have to focus on all of them. And if you are physically not well, such as your body is overheated, it's so very stressed, just from the heat, it doesn't have enough water, it doesn't have enough electrolytes, it's too tense because of the heat, you can't get to sleep because it's too hot, you are not going to be able to handle stress emotionally or mentally. And this is to help give you the physical ability to handle stress, heat stress. It's best made as a tea. Of course, extra water is great for helping through the heat. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make a sun tea out of it. It's early enough in the morning. I'm going to get a thing out and stick it out back and get some sun tea going. And I'm just going to cut this all off and take it in, rinse it off. When we rinse it, we're going to rinse it in a cold water, because you want to get rid of as little of the medicinal properties as possible. And this is going to help keep us hydrated. It's also going to help relax our body. It has a very chamomile-like action when it comes to that. And it also helps relax muscles. So in heat, a lot of times we get what are called heat cramps, where our muscles will cramp up. This will help prevent that. And basically, and then just keep our body relaxed throughout the heat. So, great for heat stress. I recommend that if you live in a hot climate, go out and see if you can find some of this stuff. You can even if you're just walking along, you can pop off one of the flowers and eat it. It has a very pineapple-like taste, a citrusy taste. I love it. I could eat these flowers like forever. And that's the same flavor that it's going to put into our ice or our sun tea. We're going to make some sun tea, put a little honey into it, put a little of this. If you have a little chamomile that you want to toss a handful of that in, that's really good too. Even if you have some dried chamomile tea, of course, then you won't want to put a handful in because that'll be a little bit much. But anyway, I'm going to collect this and I'll take us into the kitchen and show you the next day. So we've got our pineapple weed here. We've gathered it up, and for those who are used to making tea with tea bags, which is a dried herb, it's going to seem like a god-awful amount of material, plant material that we've gathered, of the pineapple weed that we've gathered. But we can't make, it just takes more fresh herb to make a tea, and the reason for that is when it's dried, it becomes concentrated. The moisture, the water has been removed, and so it becomes concentrated. Now, of course, pineapple weed we can't use as a dry tea in dry form, so don't ever buy pineapple weed in dry form. I don't think they'd ever sell it. But what we're going to do now is first I'm going to get this kind of running. I want this to be as cold as possible. So I'm going to let that run for just a minute while I take this, and I'm going to put this all into a strainer. Scrape the last of it out of the basket there. Sun tea is good for the fact that you're using the energy of the sun as opposed to using your own energy. Now this water I want just very, very cold because we want to leach as little of the goodness out of our pineapple weed as possible. So anyway, we got that going here, and that's pretty cold and it's pretty rinsed. I want to rinse them as little as possible. Get as, you do have to rinse pineapple weed because it is such a small weed. It's going to have dirt on it, especially since it tends to grow in places that not a lot of other plants are growing. So when it rains, the rain drops down on the pineapple, or drops down on the dirt and splashes it up on the pineapple weed. Now I've got a container like this. It's going to look like a god-awful amount of herb, so we're putting that in there. And this is just one of these fix-it-and-forget-it kind of things, and this afternoon, by the time the heat gets out, we're going to stick it out in the sun, and by the time the heat comes out and it gets really hot, it'll be ready. We'll just put it over ice, and I'm going to mix a little honey into it, strain the herb out, mix a little honey into it, and like I said, we're just using, put my last little couple pieces in there, we're just using the sun as our heat source. If you want, you can brew it as regular tea. Brew it on the stove and pour hot water over it and let it set just for a little bit, half an hour. This is going to take several hours. The reason I like doing this way is because usually when I'm making pineapple weed sun tea, I'm doing it because it's hot. And the last thing I want to do is be turning my stove on. It's nice to save the energy, but it's also nice not to roast yourself. So I also am going to go out, another thing you can add to this, if you want to add a few stalks of horsetail, that'll have a lot of minerals in it, and it'll leach out, and I'm going to add a few of those. You can also add just a small handful of nettle leaves. Again, it'll add vitamins and minerals to it, which again is good for your physical stress during heat. And add a little bit of chamomile to it, and that will help. Chamomile and pineapple weed complement each other very well. They're two herbs that go very well together. So you can add a little bit, like I said, of chamomile into it, and that'll just help. They work together and boost each other's ability to help the body stay relaxed and stress-free on these hot days. So I'm going to get this out onto my potting table because that's where the sun is, and I'll bring you back in a minute. So there we've got our sun tea sitting out in the sun. It's going to sit here for a little bit. I was going to tell you there is really no measurements that I can give you. Pick as much of the weed as you possibly can, and you can kind of see I've still got space down here, so maybe half again as much water. So like if you got a quart of and a loosely packed quart of loosely packed pineapple weed, you can put a quart and a half of water in on it. That's a not exact measurement. Don't, if you like your teas a little bit stronger, make it less water. If you like your teas a little bit less strong, make it you know, with more water to it. So anyway, we're going to let this set out, and this afternoon when it gets, I'll bring you back this afternoon when it's getting too hot to handle life anymore, and then we're going to add a little bit of honey to it anyway later on this afternoon and put it over ice, and it'll be a good way just to kind of beat the heat. Heat is something that people don't take as serious. We like to take cold serious, you know, oh, we got to survive the cold, but a lot of people don't realize that just as many people die of heat-related stress as they do from cold-related stress. And so when it gets hot, decide this is the time you're going to take it easy. Make sure your neighbors are taken care of, check on the elderly, check on people with children, make sure everybody's taken care of, and make yourself go to some vacant lot in the city. You're going to find a crap load of pineapple weed. Make yourself pineapple weed tea and sit back and just take it easy. I did this once before. I did it again here. Forgot. I thought I hit play or record, but I didn't. So you guys missed me pouring it through the cloth. Basically, it's a sieve with the cloth in it. I do not use cheesecloth. If you're going to use cheesecloth, make sure you buy it from a cheese store. That crap you buy in the store that they call cheesecloth is actually a craft cloth. It's made for making Halloween decorations. Don't use that stuff. If you can't get a hold of cheesecloth, just go out and buy the cheapest sheet in the store, wash it 2 or 3 times, and then cut it up to the size that you want, you know, to the cloth size that you want it. You're looking for a low thread count cloth. Tea towels a lot of times will work better, but don't go get that cheesecloth. First of all, you pay a lot to get very little, and second of all, it doesn't work. It's not good. So okay, I poured my pineapple weed through the strainer and through the cloth, and then after I let it set and drain through, and then after I let it set and drain through, I gathered the cloth all together and squeezed out the last little bit. And that's your burst of flavor, that last little bit of stuff. So you always want to try to squeeze that out, and you couldn't do that if you use that store-bought cheesecloth. So anyway, then I had forgotten, and I did not want to heat anything else up. I did all my cooking last night, so that I didn't have to have the stove on during the heat of the day, but I forgot to heat up my honey. So I had to heat up my honey. If you need, because I get my own honey, it's not pasteurized or anything, sometimes you'll get the crystals in the bottom, and that it doesn't hurt it at all in any way, shape, or form. You just stick it in a pan of hot water. The only problem is I didn't want to heat up any water. I didn't want to put any more heat in the air because it's just such a hot day. And then this is by taste. You just do it as whatever sounds good to you. But I don't know. I'm going to kind of mix in maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons. This is obviously not a tablespoon. This is a big serving spoon. So it may end up getting to be 5 tablespoons. For doing heat-related, anything that is heat-related, that you're using to help beat the heat, basically, I do not recommend using processed sugar. And the main reason I don't is because processed sugar, it revs up your system and it makes you feel hot. A lot more than honey does. So I would recommend staying with honey or maple syrup for this. It's just not, it just doesn't, it's easier for your body to process this kind of sugar than it is to process white sugar. Okay, so then that is a pineapple weed tea. It's a sun tea. You can make it as just regular tea where you basically boil some water and pour it over. I was just trying to heat the house up as little as possible. And I put it out first thing in the morning, and by the time now we're in the heat of the day and it's very hot, so now it's just perfect timing. It tastes good, first of all, so I mean that in itself is a mood booster. And the other thing is it just helps your body relax, helps your muscles stay relaxed, and helps you just get over the stress of heat. And stress, if you are not physically capable of handling stress, you are not going to be mentally or emotionally capable of handling it. If you look at a lot of times during the really hot nights, that's when domestic abuse goes up. That's when people get into more fights during that time. It's because their body is so stressed because of the heat that they basically lose control of their emotions. So you have to maintain a physical ability to handle stress as well as an emotional and a mental ability to handle stress. I'm going to stick this in the refrigerator and we're going to sip on this on and off all day. It has a nice flavor to it. Oop, let me pop my lid there. You do not have to have a fancy jar like this. It just needs to be glass. So if you want to make a quart of it in a quart jar, or if you've got a gallon jar that doesn't have a spigot on, that works fine too. We actually, human beings, actually know how to pour things, so you don't have to have a spigot. But this has a nice, refreshing, citrusy taste, and the aftertaste is definitely pineapple. And with the honey, that adds just a little extra boost, which can give you a little extra energy, but it's not going to be like processed sugar where it revs up your metabolism and makes you hotter. Pineapple weed makes a great, refreshing, heat stress relieving drink, and you can only use it during this time of the year, so get out there and give it a try. You're going to find it. If you look for it, you're going to be able to find it, and it can really help you out on a hot day like today. And I'm going to be putting mine into the refrigerator, get it nice and cold, and just be sipping it all day long in this heat. So anyway, pineapple weed tea.